people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, and now it's time for yet another segment in our weekend recap. The minimum weight WBA title fight between the reigning champion Seniesa Estrada and the challenger Jasmine Villarino. Jasmine Villarino, who started out this fight on the balls of her feet, on her toes, on the move. At the start, Jasmine was the defender and Seniesa Estrada was the aggressor. For the very first 2 rounds in this minimum weight contest, it was up to Seniesa Estrada to stalk and effectively walk down Jasmine Villarino to get off hard shots, get off hard punches, and she was doing so effectively. Yeah, even though Villarino was on the move, she was still getting hit. She's still getting touched up. Her efforts seemed to be geared towards moving around that ring and using it to offset the pressure and accuracy of Seniesa Estrada. But after 2 rounds, once Jasmine realized that wasn't going to work, she decided to put the squeeze on Seniesa. She decided to pressure. She starts getting aggressive. She starts coming forward. She starts trying to crowd Seniesa. I have to say, that's what makes Seniesa Estrada such a special fighter. She can play both the aggressor and the defender equally well, transitioning seamlessly from offense to defense, southpaw to orthodox, front foot to back foot. Seniesa can fight. She can fucking fight. Always entertaining. Always a pleasure to watch. Lest we forget, this was her first fight in 11 months, and this was her top-ranked debut. Her first fight since having parted ways with Golden Boy Promotions, a situation that kept her out of action for most of this year. Thankfully, she got to squeeze in at least one fight. At least one fight before this year was out. That was this fight, the Jasmine Villarino fight. Jasmine quickly made a decision in the early goings of this fight that moving lateral and fighting off the back foot, that wasn't working, so she decided to take the bull by the horns and tried to take it to Seniesa Estrada. Came under heavy fire. A hematoma quickly. Big old whelp on the side of her face, on the left side of her face. For what it's worth, I actually think Jasmine, in spite of losing this thing and losing this thing wide, for what it's worth, I think she gave a good account of herself, being able to withstand and endure as many hard shots as she absorbed from Seniesa Estrada. But make no mistake, she was getting hit. She's getting hit a lot. This was Seniesa Estrada's introduction to the ESPN platform and her first fight under the top-ranked banner, and she was able to put on display a wide variety of skills. Credit to Jasmine Villarino for making Seniesa Estrada have to work for it and earn those rounds, but make no mistake, she did, transitioning seamlessly from offense to defense, southpaw to orthodox, transitioning seamlessly from head punches to body punches. Seniesa Estrada, one of the great fighters that doesn't abandon the body. She was regularly going there, unleashing salvos of punches, quick combinations, and regularly putting something downstairs, putting something in Jasmine's breadbasket. It's a real wonder that Jasmine was able to take as much punishment as she did. But you know, Jasmine, she is from Argentina, and some of the toughest fighters around. Yeah, those Argentinians are made of some tough stuff. They take a great punch, and they can give a great punch. Jasmine Villarino, a serviceable fighter, and I'd like to see more of her in the future. As far as this weekend's contest, well, Seniesa Estrada, she had to go from being the aggressor to being the defender because Jasmine Villarino realized boxing off the back foot and moving lateral, that's not stopping the punches from coming in. So she attempted to barrel forward, instead attempting to smother Seniesa Estrada's work. That's it. Playing her close to the chest. Smother her work so there's not as much on her punches, and smother her so you're close enough that you can maybe try to get off some shots of your own. It really didn't work. Seniesa Estrada's defense is held up mid-range to inside, deep in the pocket. Don't forget that she's not just a fast set of hands, she's a fast set of feet as well, effectively creating space, creating enough space that she can get off her punches, get off her shots. She is a complete fighter. That is the best way to describe Seniesa Estrada, and this was what she was able to do off 11 months of inactivity. I'd wager that the next time we see her, which in all likelihood will be in either the first or second quarter of next year, the next time we see her, she may be even sharper and more devastating.
Last night she was better on the outside, better on the inside, better in the pocket, better in the exchange, better on her feet.
Just better. Better all around.
Post-fight, she didn't have a fucking scratch on her.
And what's important is that this was not just Seniesa Estrada's ring return, her long-awaited ring return, but this was her Top Rank and ESPN debut, and she actually put on a show. It was an entertaining fight with very few lulls in the action, if there were any lulls at all.
No, I didn't see any. It was all action from start to finish, and that's what you want.
Co-main event to the main event, you want to put on a show. You want to be entertaining.
Which is more important than people think.
I'll tell you something, there's a lot of skillful boxers out there. Skillful boxers, emphasis on skill. Yeah, they're plenty skilled, but not many of them are particularly entertaining. Seniesa Estrada is that unique blend, that full package to where you have a highly skilled fighter that's very adaptable, very marketable, and also very entertaining.
Goes a long way.
Now that she's gotten a chance to shake off some of the ring rust and some of the cobwebs, have her maiden voyage under the Top Rank banner, it's bigger and better things for Seniesa. I anticipate that her very next fight, will be a unification match with Germany's own WBC minimum weight champion, Tina Ruprecht. Tiny Tina Ruprecht.
Well, I think skill-wise is definitely a more skilled fighter than Jasmine Villarino, though perhaps not as durable as Jasmine, and that's going to make for some interesting situations.
Seniesa Estrada has once again successfully defended her WBA minimum weight title, and I anticipate that early next year she will take part in a unification match.
But now, congratulations to her. Hell of a top-ranked debut. Hell of a fight. Hell of a fighter.
We then come to the main event of that same card. The highly underwhelming, forgettable performance from newly crowned WBO champion Janibek Alimkhanuly against UK import Denzel Bentley, who most people thought wouldn't make it past the first quarter of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, ahead of the fight, most people thought he wouldn't make it past the first 3 rounds. He ended up going all 12.
Denzel Bentley, at the start, very cautious, very careful, giving up a bit of ground as to not give Janibek Alimkhanuly any openings to exploit, any openings to capitalize on.
Janibek Alimkhanuly advancing forward, though not quite laying into his quarry, not quite laying into his opponent, not as aggressive as one would have expected.
Janibek was fighting in spurts. That's the most glaring characteristic of this fight. You know, you get off a couple of shots and touch Denzel with his backhand, his straight left hand, because Janibek's a southpaw. But he wouldn't follow up. He wouldn't go in for the kill and really finish the guy. And it's either because he didn't want to,
or he didn't know how.
Which is a bit hard to reconcile given the buzz and the air around him, those familiar with Janibek and what they think he's capable of, as well as
what we've seen from him in the past, what we've seen from him up until this point, the way he finishes some other guys, he couldn't finish this one.
Listen, it's not a knock on Denzel Bentley, but Denzel Bentley was stopped at domestic UK level by Felix Cash back when they were both unbeaten fighters. That was a battle of the unbeatens, and Denzel Bentley couldn't make it out of the...
It only took Felix Cash 3 rounds to stop this guy at domestic level.
So the bar of expectation for a Janibek Alimkhanuly, who made Rob Brandt quit, who more recently stopped Danny Dignam in devastating fashion. The bar of expectation for Janibek is that at minimum, he should be able to take care of this guy as fast as a Felix Cash.
The last thing I expected was that this fight would go all 12 rounds.
Denzel Bentley ahead of this fight appeared like lamb to the slaughter, cannon fodder for Janibek Alimkhanuly, and that fight...
Well, I mean, you saw it. It was monotonous. It was forgettable. It was boring.
Held a live watch along here on the channel. Me and the guys were swapping cooking recipes from how boring.
It was monotonous. It was repetitive. It was anticlimactic.
It was a bad advertisement for Janibek Alimkhanuly, who has the misfortune of campaigning in today's middleweight division that is divided by political boundary lines that prevent most interesting fights from happening. I mean, you already have that to have to work around, and you already have that working against you. But if you go out there and you can't put away a guy like this...
This performance reminded me of the Hassan Endom fight. You know, Janibek didn't look too hot in that fight either. The movement from Endom...
It took him 8 rounds to stop Hassan Endom, you understand. That was last year. It took him 8 rounds to stop today's Hassan Endom. And it seems to me that any guy with a little bit of defense and a little bit of movement, bit of situational awareness, that really seems to take a lot off of Janibek Alimkhanuly's power shots, and he's not as prolific as he needs to be, prolific a puncher, as he needs to be in those situations to keep the pressure on.
Didn't see much in terms of a body attack, didn't see much follow-up.
I just don't know what to make of it. Was it that he was giving Denzel Bentley too much respect?
Or is he simply not the killer that he's been made out to be, that the air he has around him is fleeting?
The only round where Janibek looked like Janibek, quote-unquote, the Janibek you've been hearing about, had to be the 12th and final round, where he decided to pick up the pace, go for it, and really started laying into Denzel Bentley. Wobbled him a couple of times in that round, and that's the Janibek that I was expecting at the start. That's the Janibek I was expecting at the beginning.
Do you think he carried this guy?
Why on earth would he do that? It would reflect poorly on him if he did.
Maybe that's what he wanted, rather his team. They're struggling enough to get this guy fights. Maybe they need to make him look a little bit more human.
Hey, listen, I'm not in the business of making excuses for these guys. I really ain't. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around how it is.
How is it Denzel Bentley gets knocked out in 3 rounds at domestic level, but he goes the distance with this guy?
Make it make sense, because it doesn't to me. Janibek's performance has given rise to renewed interest in a Demetrius Andrade fight. Demetrius Andrade, who chose to vacate his WBO title upon being ordered to fight Janibek for the second time. That's right.
Right.
For those of you that missed it, the WBO ordered Demetrius Andrade to fight this guy 2 times. And both times, Demetrius basically told them he was going to be moving up in weight to take on Zach Parker. None of that happened.
So you vacated your WBO title for nothing. At least with that title, you could have negotiated the lion's share of the pot in a Janibek Alimkhanuly fight.
Do you know what Bob Arum's been saying? Ahead of this fight, Bob Arum stated, "We'll pay a great purse for any prominent middleweight to fight Janibek Alimkhanuly." We talked about that ahead of this fight here on the channel.
We talked about the desperate and dire situation that Janibek Alimkhanuly is in beyond this Denzel Bentley fight, regardless of how it goes.
You know, I figured, at least then, that Janibek Alimkhanuly, he can go in there, punch this guy's head clean off his shoulders in 1 round. But beyond that stellar performance and beyond a potential highlight reel knockout, what options does he really have? And the name of Demetrius Andrade almost immediately came to mind, because he's still a network and promotional free agent. He's taken to calling out Caleb Plant, of all people. Caleb Plant, who's supposed to be fighting his PBC stablemate, David Benavidez, early next year.
Demetrius has absolutely nothing going on right now.
You take one good long look at Janibek's last performance, and you tell yourself, this is the guy that made you vacate your title. This is the guy.
For the decision you ended up making, you should have just fought the fucking guy. And I don't actually believe Demetrius Andrade's shoulder injury story, by the way.
I think that was all bullshit. I think he just didn't want to travel to the United Kingdom and fight there as the away fighter on Frank Warren's show. That's what I think. I think he's bullshitting.
Janibek looked very human yesterday, very limited, very beatable. But that only reflects poorly on Demetrius Andrade for surrendering his title to him. For that, you might as well have fought the fucker.
Bit of movement, bit of defensive prowess seems to greatly offset the power that Janibek packs in each punch, and Demetrius Andrade is a characteristically defensively responsible fighter. An outside jabber, a mover, a southpaw.
Yeah, you should have fought the fucking guy.
Perhaps on the heels of this lackluster showing, Demetrius Andrade will finally come around to that idea, because you know what? Janibek needs Demetrius, and Demetrius needs Janibek. Nobody seems to be in a hurry to fight either of these 2 guys.
So fuck it, fight each other.
You're too busy, you got something else going on.
Somebody else out there offering you a fuck ton of money for your time?
It's the only silver lining of yesterday's lackluster showing, yesterday's lackluster performance.
That's it.
Janibek Alimkhanuly's air of being this division's boogeyman has all but dissipated. Looks very human, very limited, and very beatable.
Yeah, he might be from the same country as Gennady Golovkin, but Gennady Golovkin, he ain't.
Widespread criticism has broken out that Janibek Alimkhanuly is little more than just a hyped up hype job.
These criticisms and critiques are coming from individuals who are still resentful that Demetrius Andrade was widely criticized for surrendering his brown belt to Janibek. You know, they're upset about that. They feel like Demetrius, he was being mistreated. But to that, I'll say this.
They feel like Demetrius Andrade was being disrespected for some unbeaten up-and-comer, some new guy that hadn't proven anything.
They're still mad about that. They're real upset.
So the second this guy starts looking a little bit more human, he's not looking like a wrecking machine, he's not looking like a world beater, you know, that musters up all that resentment and all those feelings. But to that, I'll say this. Demetrius made that decision. And in the moment, it did make sense that, why waste your time on this guy when fighting Zach Parker is just as good, but at least it gives you the chance to become a 3-division champion. I mean, that was my rationale at the time, up until Demetrius pulled out.
You see, I, unlike a lot of other content creators, gave Demetrius the benefit of the doubt until he pulled out of the Zach Parker fight with that alleged injury.
Once that happened, I was convinced that Demetrius Andrade isn't injured. He's lying. He just wants to get out of that Zach Parker fight because he realized he didn't like the circumstances, didn't want to box as the away fighter on a Frank Warren show so far from home.
Let's cut to the chase. You think Janibek is a hype job, so what does that make Demetrius for avoiding him?
You think this guy's a hype job. You think this guy's limited. You think this guy's beatable. You think this guy sucks. Blah. So what does that make Demetrius for surrendering his belt to him?
You vacated your title, you gave it to this guy, you said you were going to move up in weight, but you didn't.
You got 2 separate opportunities to box Zach Parker. You didn't fight him once.
You sat out all of this year, and the most that people saw of you was a drunken tirade you had on your driveway aimed at a Chris Eubank Jr. fight.
After the WBO already ordered you to fight this guy, after Chris Eubank Jr. was already in talks to fight Conor Benn, because remember, the fight hadn't fallen apart yet.
I mean, if you can make 160 for Chris Eubank Jr., you can't make it for Janibek Alimkhanuly?
You see, essentially what I'm getting at is when Demetrius Andrade decided to vacate his title and surrender it to this guy, what the fuck were you guys expecting people to say?
What were you expecting people to say? Is that the first time Demetrius Andrade ever pulled out of a fight? Hey, I got a question. If the mandatory challenger were Jaime Munguia instead of Janibek, do you think Demetrius would have vacated his title?
If the mandatory challenger were Golden Boy Promotions as Jaime Munguia, or if it were boxers, Chris Eubank Jr., and they were actually receptive to a fight with Demetrius, do you think he would have entertained a Zach Parker fight?
No, the fuck he wouldn't. He would have went ahead with the fight, but the mandatory challenger was Janibek, and that's when he decided it's time to go to super middleweight.
Except he never actually went to super middleweight because he sat out all of this year.
I ain't one of these content creators trying to be bosom buddies with anybody's team, pardon me for saying so.
And I ain't one of these bleeding hearts trying to play anybody a violin for decisions they made.
I'm not. You made your bet and you've got a lie in it. You surrendered your title to this guy.
And what the hell did that get you? A year's worth of nothing. A year's worth of inactivity. If this guy is limited, if this guy is just another souped-up hype job.
Well, that's all the more reason you should have fought him. Perhaps you would have beat him.
Resentful content creators taking to their social media to upload their take and their videos on how Janibek got exposed. Well, maybe the guy did get exposed. Maybe the guy ain't no good. But that reflects poorly on Demetrius for having not fought him.
Hell, Janibek getting exposed by Denzel Bentley just makes it worse.
I don't even know that it was Denzel Bentley that exposed Janibek Alimkhanuly, or it was Janibek that exposed himself and his limitations. Did he really give this guy that much respect?
Was he pulling his punches? Was he carrying this guy? Or did he feel Denzel Bentley's power or the air from one of his shots and decided he should tread carefully?
Whatever it was, you swerved this guy already, and nothing is going to change that.